Imagine a bridge thinner than a hair, sharper than a sword, stretching across an abyss of fire so vast you cannot see the other side. Every soul that has ever lived, every prophet, every believer, every person who ever walked this earth must cross it. There is no other route, no alternative path. The bridge is the only way forward. And on either side of the bridge, hooks, iron hooks the size of thorns, reaching out and snatching people as they pass. Some are snatched and saved, some are snatched and fall into what waits below. The prophet described the Bridge of Sirat in detail that his companions never forgot. He described the speed of those who cross, the light they carry, the darkness of those without it, and the final desperate intercessions made for those hanging on the edge. In the next 10 minutes, we are going through all of it, every authentic narration, so that what you do in this life makes more sense than it ever has before. What is the Sirat? The Sirat is the bridge that will be laid across Hellfire on the Day of Judgment. Every soul must cross it to reach paradise. It is not a metaphor, it is not symbolic. It is a real structure that will be placed over the fire, and the crossing of it is one of the most detailed events described in authentic Islamic eschatology. The Quran references the Sirat repeatedly, most commonly in the phrase, the straight path, used in Surah Al-Fatiha, which every Muslim recites in every unit of every prayer. Scholars from Ibn Kathir to Imam al-Nawawi have noted that the Sirat of this world, the straight path of Islam, is directly connected to the Sirat of the hereafter. The way you walk the path in this life determines how you cross the bridge in the next. In Sahih Muslim, the Prophet described the Sirat in a long, detailed narration of the Day of Judgment. He described it as being placed across Jahannam, hell, and said that he would be the first to cross it among the prophets, and that his nation would be the first to cross it among the nations. The bridge itself is described in narrations collected and authenticated by scholars as being thinner than a hair and sharper than a sword. This is not a comfortable image, and it was not meant to be. It was meant to make the believer understand that the crossing requires preparation. You do not arrive at the Sirat unprepared and survive it by chance. The hooks and the thorns. One of the most striking features of the Sirat narrations is the description of what lines the bridge on both sides. In Sahih Muslim, the Prophet described hooks, large, thorned hooks placed along the Sirat that will snatch at the people crossing. He compared them to the thorns of a plant called sadan, a thorned shrub found in the Arabian Peninsula, but said that only Allah knows how large they truly are. These hooks serve a specific and terrible function. They are instruments of accountability. Some people are snatched by the hooks and held scratched and wounded, but suspended, not falling, they are eventually released and cross. Others are snatched and thrown into the fire. What determines which happens? The weight of the deeds carried. The scratches correspond to the sins, the hooks take what was owed. Scholars, including Ibn al-Qayyim, described this as the final settling of accounts on the bridge itself, a purification for believers whose sins were not fully expiated before the crossing, allowing them to reach paradise cleansed. The image is both terrifying and deeply merciful. The same bridge that throws the unrepentant into the fire also gives the struggling believer, the one whose faith was real but whose sins were many, one final passage through accountability before they reach safety. The light of the believers. The crossing of the Sirat does not happen in the same way for everyone, and the single most important factor in how you cross is light. In Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, the Prophet described the believers crossing the Sirat with light in front of them, and to their right light that corresponds directly to the light of their faith and their deeds. Some believers will have light like the sun, some will have light like the full moon, some will have light like a torch, some will have light the size of a thumb, barely enough to see a single step ahead flickering, and some will have no light at all. The hypocrites, those who appeared to believe but whose faith was hollow, will have some light on the Day of Judgment initially, but before they reach the Sirat, that light will be extinguished. The Quran describes this in Surah Al-Hadid, a group calling out to the believers saying, "Wait for us, let us borrow some of your light." The believers cannot share it. The light of faith is not transferable. It was earned or it was not. This is one of the most important connections the Prophet drew between this life and the next. The light on the Sirat comes from the prayers prayed in darkness before dawn, from the nights spent in remembrance of Allah, from the Quran recited, from the tears of sincere repentance. Every act of worship done in this life becomes visible light on that bridge. The speeds of crossing. The crossing of the Sirat is not uniform. In the detailed narration in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet described people crossing at vastly different speeds. Some will cross like lightning, some like the wind, some like the fastest horses, some like a fast-running man. Some will crawl, some will reach the end of the bridge scratched and barely standing, pulled through by the skin of what remained of their faith. The scholars understood these speeds as a direct reflection of how quickly and how consistently a person moved toward Allah in their life. The one who raced to prayer, who ran to good deeds, who wasted no opportunity, crosses like lightning. The one who dragged their feet in this life drags their feet on that bridge. This narration has been one of the most motivating in Islamic scholarship across generations. Ibn al-Qayyim devoted extensive passages to it, urging every believer to ask themselves, at what speed am I currently preparing to cross? Because the speed you walk toward Allah today is the speed you will move across the Sirat tomorrow. The Prophet also described in the same narration that he will stand at the far end of the bridge making supplication, calling out, "O Lord, grant safety for his nation." The image of the Prophet waiting on the other side of the Sirat, praying for every member of his nation to make it across, is one of the most emotional images in all of Islamic eschatology. Intercession at the bridge. Even at the bridge, mercy operates. In Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, the Prophet described the great intercession, al-Shafa al-Azma, which he will be granted on the Day of Judgment. Among the layers of this intercession is his pleading for believers who have fallen or are held on the bridge, those snatched by hooks but not yet lost, asking Allah to grant them passage. Other prophets will intercede. Angels will intercede. Righteous believers will be permitted to intercede for those they love and knew. This is established across multiple authenticated narrations. There is also a specific, profoundly moving narration in Sahih Muslim regarding the believers who fall into the fire after failing to cross the Sirat. They are described as being recognized by Allah as believers because their prostrations left marks that the fire cannot consume. The marks of sajda, of having pressed their foreheads to the earth in prayer, are on their bodies, and the fire is commanded not to touch those marks. They are eventually brought out of the fire by the intercession of the Prophet and returned to paradise, brought out like blackened seeds, then washed in a river at the gates of paradise until they emerge clean and restored. Not a single believer with even the weight of a mustard seed of faith will remain in the fire forever. This is stated explicitly and repeatedly in Sahih Bukhari. The Sirat is terrifying, but it is also the final demonstration that Allah's mercy is greater than his punishment. The bridge is real, the hooks are real, the light is real, and the speed at which you cross depends on what you are building right now. Every Fajr prayer you push yourself to make in the dark is light on the Sirat. Every sin you turned away from is a hook that will not catch you. Every night spent in remembrance of Allah is speed added to your crossing. The Prophet used to stand at night in prayer until his feet were swollen. When Aisha asked him why he pushed himself so hard when all his sins had been forgiven, he said, recorded in Sahih Bukhari, "Should I not be a grateful servant?" He was preparing, he was building light, and he is waiting on the other side of the bridge for every single one of us. Give this life everything you have, because on the day that bridge is laid across the fire, you will want everything you gave. May Allah carry us across the Sirat like lightning and unite us with our Prophet on the other side.